At the moment I first met my daughter, with my teeth chattering and my world turning at the speed of light, I became keenly aware that modern American medicine was playing a very large role in what was supposed to be a special and natural moment. But the mostly predictable rhythm of birth is oftentimes as unpredictable as life itself. And oftentimes, things do not go as we or as I had planned. As soon as I left the hospital with my baby, I became compelled by the notion that birth is more than something that happens to you during a routine hospital shift. It is something that happens inside of your soul. Once I became a mother, I felt connected to all those who had given birth. There was a bond formed by struggle that causes us to ask, why didn't you help me? Because even in the most routine or normal births, there is help needed. Knowing what I know now, I believe that we have to do birth better in America. My name is Savannah Taylor, and my journey to becoming a mother is intrinsically linked with my journey to becoming a certified birth doula. And because of these two things, I consider myself to be a birth activist, meaning that I am constantly striving for a more holistic and empowering culture surrounding birth. The term doula is derived from the Greek language. A birth doula is present with birthing persons during pregnancy, labor, delivery, and the postpartum period. Unlike doctors, nurses, or midwives, we work with you on a fundamentally more personal level. Our focus is on the birthing person, their emotions, and their needs. We are a safe place to turn to when perhaps your home is not, as doulas can act as confidants and protectors, providing you with resources on anything you need, from women's shelters to paternity testing. We're a place to turn to when you have questions that you may be too embarrassed to ask your provider. For instance, I've received many text message photographs of mucus plugs. And we act as a guide for families, helping each member to find their place as they welcome new life into the world. Personally, I work with many families, English-speaking, Spanish-speaking, single parents, families who are getting ready to welcome their fourth child, families that look like the all-American family, and families that look nothing like that. And as doulas, we allow you to lean on us, both literally and figuratively, when things feel too big to handle alone, which happens quite often in the labor room. Anthropologist Dana Raphael researched the success of long-term breastfeeding when someone is surrounded by continuous support during the childbirth process. Raphael's research showcased that having continuous support during childbirth increases one's chances at being successful at breastfeeding long-term. This research highlights what doulas already know to be true, that support for birthing persons cannot end when the cord is clamped, if what we want are healthy families. But thankfully, the role of the doula and the impact of the doula does not end after you have your baby. Because having a doula has been shown to increase satisfaction with the childbirth experience, lower the need for medical intervention, and decrease the use of pain medicine. We aim not just for healthy mom, healthy baby, which is what we all want, but we want everyone in that room to be healthy, happy, safe, secure, and emotionally gratified. Because healthy for us also includes not being traumatized. And when trauma exists in the labor room, it can affect not only the psyche of the birthing person, but the dynamic of the family as a whole. It is not just about the physical outcome of birth for us, as birth often happens very differently and looks very different for each person, but it is about the fact that during your labor and birth, an event that will shape you for the rest of your life, you were well taken care of, not just in your body, but in your heart as well. So when we look at the arc of childbirth, specifically in America, we see a trend of science becoming more increasingly involved in the childbirth process. In 1915, out of every 100,000 pregnant people, about 607 of them would die of childbirth-related causes. However, we've made great scientific strides. With ultrasound technology, genetic testing, and life-saving medication, we've been able to make improvements in outcomes in childbirth, saving the lives of birthing persons and their babies. In 2007, the number of deaths dropped to about 12. Now, these numbers may seem relatively small to you, but this picture gets very troubling when you look at the fact that according to the World Health Organization, birthing persons are more likely to die in childbirth today than 2 decades ago. And the outcomes are even worse for people of color. And not only that, but as a country, we are spending more money on interventions in childbirth than any other country in the world. So not only are these medical interventions not directly improving mortality outcomes in childbirth, but birthing persons are walking away from birth emotionally traumatized. More than 50,000 Americans a year will nearly die in childbirth, meaning that they have some sort of mortal event that brings them close to death. And if all those who give birth in this country, roughly 10% will walk away from birth so emotionally scarred that they may experience post-traumatic childbirth stress disorder, which can cause them to avoid routine medical care, intimacy with their partners for fear of getting pregnant again, and become emotionally withdrawn and depressed. So what's going on now? We were just saving lives with science. But the reality is, we've swung our pendulum of care too far, and science is taking too much of a front seat, which has led to an awakening of alternative care, including the support of doulas. From 2006 to 2013, the use of doulas in the United States doubled. And since 1992, DONA International, the largest certifying body of doulas in the world, has certified over 13,000 birth doulas, including me. We are activating in order to protect those who are giving birth. Because birth does not exist within a dichotomy. It is not something that merely happens in your heart, but it is also not something that only happens inside of your body. It exists at the intersection of science and the sacred. And it is the doula's role in childbirth to facilitate this intersection. Picture this right angle. The vertical line is science, the medical aspects of the event. But this horizontal line is the emotional, mental, and spiritual components of self, or what I am choosing to call the sacred. Birth intersects these 2 points, creating something that is perfectly strong and that can act as a foundation for further building, much like a right angle. Because the sacredness of birth is undeniable. But that sacredness often takes place in a very scientific realm. As doulas, we walk into these scenarios that may not be going as planned and recognize that there are a variety of things that we have no control over. Because we do none of these medical things, but we walk in, read the room, and recognize what is missing. In my work as a doula, it is necessary to engage with my clients prenatally to discover what the concerns are for this pregnancy. Sometimes this is the first pregnancy that has made it to term or that has ended in a live birth. And the concerns for that pregnancy are going to look very different than the concerns for a first pregnancy with no issues. But regardless, both births will be life-altering. So we take into account the fact that science is going to play very different roles in both of these births, as they may have varying degrees or methods of intervention. But using the concerns and turning them into productive tools to make birth better is at the heart of my role as a doula. Going back to my labor room, I realize now that we bring with us a wide range of emotions that we have to process in order to embrace the sacred elements in childbirth. All of this happens during labor. And during labor, I am present with my clients from the onset of active labor, which can be anywhere from 5 to 24 hours of support. And as soon as I leave that room, I am forever connected to the lives of that family. And unlike a hospital, I will work with them for weeks and sometimes even months after the birth of their baby. Because there's no one perfect way to give birth. But there is a better way to treat those who are giving birth. No matter what type of experience in childbirth you have, you deserve continuous support. Because no matter what your birth will look like, it is existing at this very unique point. It is existing at the intersection of science and the sacred. We see herds of elephants surrounding a female elephant who is getting ready to birth her calf in order to protect her from outside interruptions and intrusions. But it is also within our mammalian DNA to protect ourselves and to keep ourselves safe during birth. Because birth does not merely exist within a hospital room or a birthing center or at home in your bathtub. It exists within the human spirit. So now that we know that birth is a comprehensive and holistic experience, it is important for us to protect it. And in order for us to protect it, I will ask you all to begin doulaing one another. Although having a professional whom you hire and who supports you prenatally and in the postpartum period is a wonderful tool, the reality is that it may be impossible for some to attain. But in those circumstances, it is possible and in fact necessary for the community to surround those birthing persons with the strength and ferocity of the herd of elephants and to lift them up as they bring new life into the universe. As mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, partners, and friends, it is your role to acknowledge the fact that this birthing person holds the entire weight of the universe on their shoulders. They are risking everything for love, everything for the most sacred parts of humanity, and it is your job to support them. And birthing persons, it does not make you weak to extend an invitation into your community and allow them to support you. Use your village and use it well. Because if we want a better birth experience and we want fewer people to walk away from birth traumatized, it is necessary that we recognize the existence of birth at the intersection of science and the sacred, and the permeation of sacredness in all of ourselves. We were all brought forth from a womb at some point. Therefore, we have an obligation to the wombs of one another. So in this right angle of birth, the vertical line is science, the fact that it's important to keep track of your weight and your blood pressure and your blood sugar. But the horizontal line is the emotional, mental, and spiritual components of what makes us human beyond our physical understanding. These two lines intersect to create beautiful birth. But when one line is imposing too much, or when one line is disconnected, the angle disappears. It is no longer right. But when the angle is at perfect intersection, then the weight of the world can rest upon it, and it will make up the cornerstone of life. Thank you.